Logan Ramsey is a product of a scientific mom who at one point was well respected for her research, but then things took a turn in her research. His mom's name is Miriam Ramsey, and she was a very high level geneticist. She's a scientist, and so she would research, and she's developed a lot of things. She has a lot of patents for a myriad of other scientific things. But at one point, she kind of became the, I guess, black sheep, or the entire community kind of turned on her in addition to the government, because one of her experiments kind of went wrong. So the experiment that she was working on, or not really an experiment per se, but something that she had developed, it was a manipulation of genes, and this was supposed to work to eliminate locusts, and the modification that she was making was supposed to, so it just feeds on certain things. And so this was something that was deployed in China, but what happened with this particular thing, it didn't go right, and so it ended up causing a mass famine in China, and that ultimately spread around the world. And so, needless to say, everybody distanced themselves from her after that, and she was no longer, well respected. So her son Logan had worked with her on her work, and he is not as smart as her, but he knows a lot about, science and genetics and all this stuff. And so after this all happened, she kind of became reclusive in a sense. And over a period of time, her husband died. And so it was just her and Logan. Miriam has a daughter as well, and her name was Kara. But Kara was in the government. I think she was in some division of the government, like the CIA or something like that. And so she was deployed a lot. So essentially, it was just her and Logan after the father died and after this whole big fallout regarding her work. So at the time that the book starts, Miriam had passed away. And after this whole debacle went down, she had driven herself off a road that went over a cliff into the ocean. And so she ran her car off, and so this is how she passed away. So during this time, the government had a lockdown on genetic research, and there was only certain organizations that could do certain research. And so because he worked with his mom, he got into trouble over something, and he ended up going to jail. And so the way that he was able to get out was to work for the government. And so he had been doing that for years and years, even after his commitment had lapsed. So he had gotten word about some scientist who was doing something at a location. And so when he went there to investigate or figure out, follow up on the intel, there was a blast in the place, and it wasn't a typical weapon. It was glass shards that exploded, but this particular explosion had a mutation or some kind of genetic modifier in it, and so things started to change with him. Even though it wasn't a blast in the typical sense, he was injured, but then after that happened, he noticed that his memory had improved. He could remember things so clearly than he had ever before. And then one day he was playing chess with his daughter, and she never beat him. And so now, after he had beat her a couple of times, she was like, "This is not right. What's happening? Were you just letting me win this whole time?" And so when his daughter brought this up, I think this was one of the moments where he realized that something was different about himself. And whereas he wouldn't be able to read, although he wanted to, he would just devour books. And so he noticed that as well, but he didn't really want to say anything. And then he was encountering some severe body pains and stuff. And after the explosion, the government agency that he worked for had done some genetic tests and all that, just to make sure that whatever happened didn't modify his genome, and they didn't find anything there either. But he was feeling kind of strange. And so eventually they came and picked him up. Of course, when anybody's like, have higher IQ or modified in some way, or the government want to experiment on you or want to isolate you or something. And so he ended up getting picked up, and so he was being held in a facility after that. So there he was. There's somebody coming. They tested his IQ, and I think he had said that his IQ when he was tested when he was in school or high school was like 118 or something. It was lower, but then when they tested him again after this happened, his IQ was not measurable. His IQ was so high. And so, of course, they knew that they had to keep him there because they didn't know what was the effect of this blast or how is this going to affect other people, and possibly for experimental reasons as well. But anyway, one day he was in there, and there's this tactical team that came in, and they kind of busted him out, and whoever was in the way kind of got. And so when he was let out the facility, he found out that the person who had come to take him out was his sister Kara, which it was a little surprising because he hadn't talked to his sister for a very long. They didn't really talk that often because she's constantly deployed. But anyway, she broke him out, and so he found out that his sister has also been what they describe in the book as upgraded, because she has gotten this, I guess, medication or this shot or whatever, however it was administered. And so she found out that this was a work of his mom. But then if his mom was dead, how could she have made this, formula? And so they figured out that the mom must be alive. And though they were told that she had died years ago, she must have been alive. So he figured he had to find her. There had to be a reason why he had upgraded them both. What was the reason for this? And so he figured out, of course, with his much higher degree of intelligence now, he can decipher things. Now later on he can kind of preemptively predict things, and he can read body language and facial expressions. He was almost like a robot in a sense, except, he didn't have any artificial parts in him, but he was highly, highly intelligent. And so he figured that the mom must have a message for them, and, they didn't know where to find her. So where would the message be? How could they figure out what she wanted from them? And so he figured it had to be in the genome. And so when he scanned all this stuff, I think they used some kind of machine to help them scan or compare the pre-genome to now, or what's different, and figure out there was a code written in there, and they figured out where to find her. So when they drove all the way, I believe this place that they had figured out where she was, or the area that she was in New Mexico. But when they arrived, they found out that, yep, she indeed had not died years prior. But now, when they found her, she was dead. So when they found her, there was a kind of like a hard case, almost like a briefcase, and in there she had some syringes and stuff of her work, and she left them a video recording talking about, she apologized and the reason why she did this, and what she wanted to do as far as what her work was, and what her intention was in creating this. I guess I'll refer to it as a serum, because it was kind of delivered in different ways, because Logan was via an explosion, and then for Kara, she felt like a gnat had bitten her, and this is how it was injected into her, I guess via a drone or something. So I'll refer to it as a serum just for to make things easier. So when they found this out, and they went over what the mom had left behind, they were kind of at odds, because Kara kind of agreed with what the mom wanted, and Logan was kind of like not so much, because in his mind he's thinking about how things went bad in China, and this could potentially be a repeat if they followed through with what their mom wanted. So of course, when they're both at odds, here now they're clashing. And so they got into it, and he was able to escape. Although he tried to destroy the work, he wasn't successful in doing so. So then they kind of part ways, and he kind of, stayed in the shadows. He wanted to avoid Kara because now they're at odds, and he really didn't really have a way now that he felt like he could like stop her from carrying out what his mom wanted. But over time, he kind of blended back into society. Of course, he had to change his looks because they had those CCTV and facial recognition. He laid low, had different identities and all that. But all the while, he was kind of keeping an eye out for things in the news or anything like that that could lead her to where Kara was. But anyway, there was an event that happened in a town called Glasgow in the book, and that's in Colorado. But it was very, I guess to me, when I came to that part, it was kind of obvious that this had something to do with Kara or, his mom's work, because there's a town of people where a lot of people were getting sick and they had really weird symptoms and a lot of them were dying. So, the government had to quarantine the area, National Guard had to come in and all that. So he decided that that's where he had to go. And then when he went there, he had to, I guess, go in kind of incognito and try to gather as much information that he could. And then ultimately led him to Kara. And of course, when he went to see Kara, things didn't really go so well because, Kara at this point, when they met up again, had been much more advanced than he was. So he figured that maybe she had gotten upgraded again. And I believe she might have had some medical knowledge as well, because she was working on the product that the mom left to enhance certain things and to carry out the wishes. So now he decides in order to be able to stop Kara, he had to be just as, I guess, strong and intelligent and all of that as she was. So he concocted some kind of thingy to upgrade himself again, which was kind of crazy because how long did it take his mom to come up with this serum? But of course, now that he's so much superior than what he used to be and probably way smarter than his mom, I guess it is conceivable that he could have been able to, do another upgrade within a short period of time. And so then he had to figure out a way to stop his sister. He had to go back to the people who held him at that facility to be able to ask for help, because he figured that that's the last place that she would think that he would go for help. And so they had to work together to be able to find a way to stop her. Now, she had been able to recruit a bunch of people that she had injected with the serum to take it all over the world, because the ideology that the mom had, she kind of agreed with it, but what she wanted would require for the entire world to be a part of what she wanted in order for the change to be effective for what she wanted. So in the end, he was able to work with the agency and to be able to stop his sister from causing this whole thing that, his mom wanted to carry out. But in the end, though, there was a tragic event that happened as a result of him trying to essentially save humanity, which kind of sucked. But he ended up also towards the end of the book being able to be reunited with his family. He has a daughter, and then he was married at the time that this all went down, but it had been years and years and years since he had to go on the run, and so life had gone on without him. So that was kind of sad too as well. So I did enjoy this book. It was a little bit scary because when you think about the potential of science and things to come in the future, I'm just like, oh my God, I wish I was like 80 at this point, because I'm sure this type of thing is already happening, but within a few years from now, it's going to be the norm, and weird things are going to be happening as far as, genetics and all this. So I'm like, oh gosh, I don't even want to think about that. But anyway, if you have read or listened to this book, let me know your thoughts. Until next